I'm Miles Mullen, I'm the honors director. Ms. Henry is the assistant director. And historically, honors students have done a capstone project that's been for 3 hours and been a 25 to 35 page paper presentation. What we began to do, and we thought Katie would be the perfect one to break ground on this, is think about, well, if they have a project presentation that they're doing or a final project in their major that's not a paper, could we roll the honors hours, 3 hours into that, allow them to do even a bigger project, and then maybe do a short theoretical paper to go with it, or something like that. So this is our first time trying this. Katie's done an excellent job navigating, as she's already indicated, multiple constituencies. And so she has done the project. The project got to be a little bigger, as y'all saw, than it would have been otherwise. It allowed her to tackle a bigger project. And then she's also written a theoretical paper dealing with API and considering that from a Christian perspective. And she's going to talk about that. So thanks, Katie, for being our guinea pig. I also knew these two would be great ones to work with on something new too.
Well, we'll continue with our presentation. And the next part is, as Dr. Mullen said, the Census Plan Your Honors Program research paper. This is a partial fulfillment of the course requirements for the honors research program, research class. The contents of the paper include the introduction, the Internet of Things theory, the application programming interface solution to the Internet of Things, and a biblical perspective, as well as the conclusion. So, introduction. Question of the day. What do an electrical outlet and a restaurant waiter have in common? We kind of already answered this a little earlier in the day, but go ahead and give it your best shot. Faith. Stop.
You request something from it, and it gives you something back.
There you go. Absolutely right. Both act as interfaces to deliver an external service. So we've already used the restaurant waiter one. That's the next slide. We'll skip over that. But for the electricity portion, same thing here. Your electrical outlet is your API. You are plugging in, say, a microwave into the electrical outlet. And you expect it to deliver electricity as you desire. And so it can cook your Pop-Tart or your leftover chicken nuggets. Electricity exists outside the home. Y'all don't like chicken nuggets?
No, it's clear that's your favorite.
Electricity exists outside the home or outside the building, however you deliver, whichever venue you're delivering electricity to, in varying voltages. The standardized delivery of electricity in North America is 112 volts of alternating current at 60 hertz. And so appliances like a microwave are expecting this specific currency, and that's how they're going to respond to it, and they're going to alter it as needed to perform its action. And so appliances like a microwave, pardon the pun, operate on the same wavelength. That's
Ha ha ha.
And we've talked about the waiter illustration, but here's another graphic to explain it. There's the user asking for a food item. The API is the waiter bringing it and taking the request and delivering the fulfilled request. And the backend, which is the developer, or in this case, Google Maps platform, is serving up the food for you. APIs are all about abstraction. Abstraction is vital to the technological world as it continues to grow. Who here has never heard of the term abstraction before? Never heard of it? Okay, so abstraction means to make it a lot easier to comprehend, and that's what the API does. It's instead of going straight from the person sitting in the restaurant chair to the kitchen and asking for them to make this, the waiter is the abstraction step along the path to make that happen. Abstraction is vital to the technological world as it continues to grow. The exponentially expanding network of connectivity is commonly referred to as the Internet of Things. As Ms. Todd loves to say, data only grows. You will have data coming from your smartwatch about how many steps you've tracked, and that goes to your Fitbit application on your phone, which I don't know maybe links to your bed or something and tells you how to sleep or something like that. The Internet of Things is just the theory that everything in this world is starting to become technologized. This paper expounds upon the IoT theory, explains the solution that APIs deliver for that, and extends a biblical perspective on APIs. So, this comment is from an article on Wired.com. Cisco's current Internet of Everything prediction is 37 billion intelligent things such as cars, appliances, smartphones, tablets, monitoring sensors, and more, all connected to the Internet. Internet connectivity is made possible through REST APIs. REST means representational state transfer, which follows HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol guidelines. HTTP is what you put in your browser, and that's the protocol that your browser is playing along with the internet to reach the web pages that you want. And so this relates to HTTP. AccuWeather, which is a weather content delivery weather company, has 9 APIs alone, like Google Maps platform. You can see there are 9 here. Other popular APIs are found for Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Google Maps, PayPal. So if you want to send a PayPal purchase through a website to the people who are running the website, you can use a PayPal API to accomplish that, just like we've done with Google Maps here. This is a graphic about the flow for AccuWeather's APIs. It's a little hard to read from the back, but you use the Locations API to find the location that the user is currently at. It breaks into searching for geoposition, postal code, and city name. It gathers all of that back up and then sends it out to the Forecast API, the Current Conditions API, Indices API, and Weather Alarms API. All of those connected using this data, which is drawn from the Locations API. And for the API solution, APIs take bits of code and abstractify it for developers. This is, in my project, the Maps JavaScript API, which allows limited control over parameters like zoom, location, and markers. I don't mess with entirely all of it. It's delivered to me by the Google Maps platform. And it allows for greater efficiency as a developer. Like Dr. Nelson was saying, I didn't have to go through and write all of the code that Union had already written. Similarly, I don't have to go through and write all the thousands and possibly millions of lines of code maybe that Google Maps platform has done to create this consistent Google Maps throughout the world. Outsourcing code is time. The APIs can be one of 4 categories: private, partner, open, which is another word for public, or composite. Private APIs are created, used, and maintained in-house within one company. Partner APIs are shared outside of the company, but they usually have some type of mutual gain between the parties who are using it, the developer and the user. Open APIs, which is what the Maps JavaScript API is where the developing company provides support, so like that technical documentation that you can find on the Google developing site. And in exchange, the company receives more data from a broader usage of however they deliver it to so many people. Composite APIs group all of the calls or requests together from several applications, which is similar to what AccuWeather was just a moment ago. And it provides a cleaner, unified response. And then lastly, we'll talk about the biblical perspective on APIs. First of all, the Bible talks a lot about sharing. In Hebrews 13:16, it says, "Do not neglect to do good and share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God." 1 Timothy 6:18 says, "They are to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share." And Luke 6:38, "Give, and it will be given to you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. But with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you." And so, a lot of this we've talked about is code that is passed around from, first it was on the Google developer site, and then Union University took it, and they have implemented some extra features into it, and then they so graciously passed it on to me and HLG Marketing to use. And so this is a great way to come together and deliver great products that are beneficial to everyone from kind of a unified standpoint. And then stewardship as well. In Matthew 24:14-30, it's the parable of the talents, which you're probably familiar with, maybe not. That's where the master of the house gives one servant 10 talents, one servant 5 talents, and one servant 1 talent. The servants return, and the one with the 10 talents has multiplied the talents that he received, which is like a currency talent, not used today in that same aspect. And then the one with 5 talents produced 5 more talents, and the one with 1 did not produce any. He went and hid it, and so he wasn't being a good steward, as the master of the house says. So, as Christians, we are called to be good stewards of the resources we are given, and one of the most precious resources God gives us is time. So, like I said earlier, abstractifying everything and taking this code as an API instead of having to write out every line of code makes you a good steward of time. And Ephesians 5:15-16 says, "Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of time because the days are evil." Again, we are to use our time wisely. In conclusion, the internet continues to grow and data continues to flow. APIs play a crucial role in keeping the internet ecosystem rolling. The creation and usage of APIs is consistent with a Christian worldview because the Bible encourages sharing and good stewardship. And APIs, though they don't directly serve us food like restaurant waiters do, APIs do still serve us well. And there are ours. Any questions on that portion of the presentation? Dr.
Yeah,
Nelson?
so you picked out a couple of good examples of how an API could reflect being consistent with certain Christian principles. Okay, but did you give any thought to ways in which it isn't consistent with a Christian perspective? I mean, it wasn't created in a Christian environment, the idea, right? Not everything that's man-made is godly or Christian or biblical in its orientation.
Sure.
I just was curious if you had given any thought to ways in which it doesn't match.
I haven't. I think maybe if you had like a private API and someone stole that API key and was able to somehow use that, that would be obviously a violation of Christian principles. But that's a good question. You have any more questions? Ms. Tuck?
None that are really relevant to this component. I was going to ask something similar to Dr. Nelson's. I do think there is some room in that area that if the whole data collection thing, like if Google's busy taking the data from us because we use their API, but we have no idea of what's happening with that data, there's a lot that could be said about that, but that's not relevant for me to ask a question. I started to ask a little bit if you thought you'd run into APIs, but you've proven that you did in your own project. So, but they become very popular in our field, and so I think that would be something that all of us in the computer department certainly need to understand. Is it difficult to utilize an API from your perspective? Did you find the first, because this is one of the first ones you've really tried to implement. So was it difficult to utilize the commands they give you and make it work on your project?
Well, it took me about 70 hours, so take with that what you will.
All of it was with the API components?
Not all of it, but a good majority of it. So it was well documented online, and I think it could be done.
So I'm trying to help point out that APIs, while they sound simple to use, are not always simple to use. They are code at the highest level, and so. But I don't really have any other questions that I can think of.
as a, I don't know anything about this coding. Is there an alternative to APIs for data sharing? Or is it, or for what's the request? When the request comes from, is an API necessary at every interface? Or is there another way to do it?
So like if you were concerned about data sharing with Google, you would be probably writing all of that code that they have done with the Maps JavaScript platform and the Google Maps platform entirely. You would be programming all of that yourself so that you would be hosting it and none of it would go through Google. If you do choose to use the Google platform, then there is data flowing to Google. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
Are there alternatives on the market to APIs, or is that just a logical construct that if you want that kind of application, you will be forced to use those methods?
As far as I know, that's kind of just a logical. APIs really aren't. Actually, I think some of them you can purchase yourself. Like for API key, you can purchase that. But generally, it's more of a logical construct that just follows programming. Otherwise, you would be writing your own code, most likely.
If I can interject, it's also to control. Google will only allow you to play their game their way. If you plan to use their piece of the puzzle, you will play their way. Is there alternate ways to transfer data? Absolutely. But not to get all of the services that you would wish for from different locations, because this is becoming kind of the standard way. Just to give clarification.
Okay.
Do you think of any ways that you could use API in order to serve others, or like, I don't know, like, carry out the Great Commission?
Yeah, I think if you had any sort of application that would be useful for missions. One example of that would be last spring break, the CIS department took a team to Colorado Springs, Colorado for LightSys Codathon for missions, and we were helping develop an application that they had, a phone application that had an organization aspect for the missions conference itself, and we were looking at using an API for that, so in order to create functionality on their application.
Have you ever created your own API yet?
Yeah, she'll be making more maps before she
Okay.
chooses.
I thought you were going to say she'll be making more money, but she
No,
would
she
be
won't.
doing that.
Yeah, she'll buy your new
Yeah,
CIS.
she'll build my new building.
Do we have any more questions today? Scott, do you want to end it?
You can end it.
Okay. Well, that concludes this presentation. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoyed and learned something new.
Again, we thank you for your time. This was a little longer than some of ours. Don't let that keep you from coming to future invitations. All right?